Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam.
So this week we are continuing from the name of Al-Adl. We will last week we did like an introduction last week, and this week inshallah I will read the part that we covered last week, and then we will continue from where we left. Last week we talked about how, you know, in the world, like from atomic level to the cells in our body to the stars, like we see destruction and construction, and we see all the transformation, incomings and outgoings, but we see a perfect balance measured by one single being. And this week we will talk about how, you know, it would be like if it's left to unconscious nature, and there would have been, of course, like no balance. Inshallah, we will study that this week. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. The second point, the divine name of all just. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وإن من شيء إلا عندنا خزائنه وما ننزله إلا بقدر معلوم. And there is not a thing, but its sources and treasures inexhaustible are with us, but we only send down thereof in due and ascertainable measures. One point concerning this verse and one manifestation of the name of all just, which is the greatest name, or one of the six lights comprising the greatest name, like the first point, appeared to me from afar while in Eskişehir prison. In order to bring it closer to the understanding, again by means of a comparison, we say the following. The universe is a palace, but it is such a palace that in it is a city which is being constantly shaken by destruction and reconstruction. And in the city is a country which is being continuously agitated by war and emigration. And within the country is a world which is unceasingly revolving amid death and life. But such an astonishing balance, equilibrium and equilibration prevail in the palace, city, country, and world, that it self-evidently proves that the transformations, incomings and outgoings apparent in these innumerable beings are being measured and weighed every moment on the scales of a single being who sees and supervises the whole universe. All these are being measured and weighed every moment on the scales of a single being who sees and supervises the whole universe. For if it had been otherwise, if causes had been free and unrestrained, which try to destroy the balance and overrun everything, through a single fish laying 1,000 eggs, and a single flower like a poppy producing 20,000 seeds, and through the onslaught and violence of change and the elements flowing in floods, or if it had been referred to aimless, purposeless chance, anarchic, blind forces, and unconscious dark nature, the equilibrium of beings and balance of the universe would have been so utterly destroyed that within a year, indeed within a day, there would have been chaos. That is to say, the seas would have been filled with things in total disorder and confusion and would have become fetid. The atmosphere would have been poisoned with noxious gases, and as for the earth, it would have turned into a refuse heap, slaughterhouse, and swamp. The world would have suffocated. This is the opposite of what we see now in the universe, right? Totally. Inshallah, any comments, Colin Hocam, from what we read last week, or from what we will study this week, inshallah? We can start with you, inshallah, Colin Hocam.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Yes, last week we were talking about adl or adala, meaning, or having its meaning grounded in the notion of balance. And adl meaning things being in the correct place where they're supposed to be. So now he's looking now at the absence of adl. And the absence of adl connotes the absence of balance. And it's the absence of balance that lies at the heart of all forms, expressions, and manifestations of injustice. Again, we should reiterate the point that justice here means things being in their right or their decreed places, the places where they are meant to be. So we talk about a round peg in a round hole, not a square peg in a round hole. And people say, you know, when people are trying to put a square peg in a round hole, it means they're trying to make something fit which doesn't fit. So when things are not where they are meant to be or decreed to be, then what we have is imbalance and disequilibrium and clear injustice. And again, injustice here has to be understood in the widest of terms and not just as a lack of justice in the social sense. So we have to broaden our understanding of justice and injustice. Injustice means things are not in their correct place. And I think that here in this opening section, he's saying that if causes had not been under control of one administrator, if they had been free to operate in an ad hoc and completely volitional way, the balance would have been totally destroyed, because you have hundreds of millions of different causal currents, each acting according to its own particular whims and caprices. If you imagine that, it's impossible to imagine, because everything would be destroyed through disequilibrium. A few weeks ago, maybe months ago, we talked about the termites in Africa who build these huge cathedral-like towers out of mud. These termites are like large ants. And the queen of the termites, her job is to lay eggs, and that's all she does. And the worker termites, and there are hundreds of thousands of them, are there to take the eggs and incubate the eggs, and so that new termites come into existence. Now, the termites have one major predator, and that is the anteater. And if the anteater, who comes to this cathedral-like tower of the termites, and with its very, very tough claws, destroys the termite mound and eats the termites, this may look like mutual hostility, but if this didn't happen, if this didn't take place, in a few weeks, the whole of the continent of Africa would be overrun by termites. So if there were no single administrator taking care of the justice in the world, in other words, ensuring that everything is in its right place, if these things were left to the devices of the causes themselves, there would be chaos. Chaos would ensue within days. So if things had been referred, as he says, to aimless, purposeless chance, anarchic blind forces, and unconscious dark nature, the equilibrium of beings and the balance of the universe would be utterly destroyed, so that within a year or within a day, they would be chaos. So this is quite clear, you know, the whole of the cosmos is operating in accordance with an extremely finely balanced equilibrium. And when it goes out of equilibrium and becomes disequilibrious, then always chaos will ensue. This is quite clear from what we see in the creation.
Jazakallah Khanajam for the definition, you know, justice, everything is in their correct place. And we see that everywhere. And it's interesting, yani, in our body too, right? From the atoms in our body, the elements, the cells in our body, like everything in its their correct place where they have to be. That's how we are alive, right? We see even that just the name Adl in our body every second, and Allah keeps that in balance to like every second.
Yes, and when the balance breaks down, then we get what they call a disease, and disease comes from two words: dis-ease. So that ease, which that equilibrium, that balance, that easiness, if you wish, breaks down and becomes dis-ease. So disease means lack of equilibrium, lack of balance. There is something wrong in the body, something not working as it should be. Something is in the wrong place. So yes, the body can become diseased, and the cosmos, the planet, can become diseased. The earth can become diseased. Ecosystems can become diseased. And these things are there to show us, that balance is extremely important. So we have examples of imbalance which are shown to us, local examples of imbalance, which are shown to us as examples of what will happen or what could happen if there were no singular administrator taking care of the balance of the whole cosmos.
Mm-hmm. And here, the sentence right before it, we read, it's everything, all of these things we talked about are being measured and weighed every single moment, right? On the scales of a single being who sees and supervises the whole universe.
Absolutely. I mean, if you consider how things work in the body, or in ecosystems, in a tree, for example, what has to take place in order for these entities to operate at their optimal level, and to operate well and to produce the things that they're supposed to be producing. There has to be someone who is keeping the equilibrium and the balance of the universe in check. And, at every second, because anything could go wrong. Absolutely anything could go wrong. So if things were left to the devices and to the will of the causes themselves, within days, or even more quickly than that, within hours, chaos would ensue.
But we don't see that. And in the chat, like related to it, Harun Hocam, he says, referring to Tafsir Rishad Rijaz, emotional and sensational balance is retained by the balance of three mainstream feelings: Kuway Aqliya, the power of reason; Kuway Ghadabiyya, the power of anger; and Kuway Shahaviyya. I think that's the power of animal desires. It is quite remarkable to consider what would happen if, for example, sea animals were to disobey the balance by Al-Adl. We could see greater fish eating all the small fish, remaining no descendant. However, it is balanced. Bigger fish are limited to retain the balance by the creator, Al-Adl. Even, in this animal realm, right? As Kolnojami, as you said, like termites in Africa and all the animals, we see like they're maybe fighting, killing each other. But that's even balanced by someone who sees everything. Otherwise, we would see that they would overrun everything, right? One species would overrun everything.
Yeah, he's absolutely right. He's also drawing attention to this notion of the golden mean. The different forces that are within the human psyche and the human psycho-spiritual makeup. We have these different there's different forces. So there's the force or the power of attraction, the power of repulsion. There's the power of intellect, and all of these different powers, these different faculties which exist within the psycho-spiritual makeup of human beings. If they are not in equilibrium, then the human being is out of balance. And, a human being is the only being in the creation who can elect to be out of balance, who can choose to be unjust. There is no other being in creation, maybe apart from the jinn, the jinn who are disobedient. They have the same kind of makeup as human beings. They are able to disobey. But apart from the jinn and human beings, no other being, no other entity in the whole of God's creation is able to choose to be unjust. In other words, only human beings and jinn are able to choose to put things in the wrong place. And we do this often. And Harun Hoja's discourse here on the golden mean, these different powers which exist in human being, are indicating that it's only human beings and jinn. But since we don't know much about jinn, we can confine our discussion to human beings. It's only human beings who can decide for these powers which exist within our makeup to be out of kilter, to be disequilibrious, to be imbalanced. And that's why Islam and Taslimiya Ubudiyya, the surrender of the names, is about trying to bring about an optimal level of balance. So in surrender, in submission, there is also balance.
And we also have Dr. Muhammad as our panelist this week, inshallah. Muhammad, any comments on this part?
Yes, assalamu alaikum everyone, and welcome. May Allah make this session first of all for all of us. Alhamdulillah, Kornajam put it very well, so there's not much to say. But yeah, I mean, when we are talking about justice, Ustad described that there's two types of justice, and mostly as a common people like me understand justice like action of a judge or a leader or someone who has authority on us, whether he is acting justly or not. This is very limited perspective, but Ustad takes our attention to the bigger picture, and he show us the manifestation of justice in the universe, and he talks about the balance and equilibrium in the universe. Because of sometimes because of our limited perspective, we think that there is injustice in everywhere. This is because of our misunderstanding of justice. So as Colin Ozam said, if some unbalanced things going on in our body, then we get disease. Let's think about amount of sugar in our blood. So when we are thinking about unbalance, we are not talking about 1 kilogram less or 1 kilogram more of sugar in our blood. We are talking about very tiny amount of sugar which is missing, which cause disease in our body. So we are talking about, there's an equilibrium in the universe. It's very, very tiny measure, so it's not like, 2 kilograms sugar less, because of that we are, getting sick. So there are perfect balance in the universe. And Ustad says that this is impossible to attribute aimless, purposeless, chance, anarchic, blind forces. In a factory, there is a chief, right? Let's say in a construction site, there is a chief there to take care of the things to be done in a proper way. Then how about in this vast amounts of universe? It is impossible to have without a sustainer who is the all just. And also, I heard a story about, this is a true story. It happened in Italy. One time in a village in Italy, they decided to kill the mice in the field because they thought that mice were harming their crops. And they kill all the mice. And next summer, and, the whole village, the snakes, came out all over the places in that village. So during the winter time, that field mice was eating the snakes. So there is balance there. there is balance in everywhere, but sometimes because of our lack of perspective or lack of knowledge of justice, we cannot see those fine balance or equilibrium in all over the place in the universe.
Shalom Omar, as you said, also like Colin Hocam said, except for humans and jinn, right? The animals also, Allah Ta'ala created them for a purpose, for a balance in the universe, in the world. Every animal has a purpose and it's fulfilling that purpose and the balance in the world. And when you interfere in it, you destroy the balance.
Yeah, I think it's going to come later, the cleanness and purification proceeding from the name of most holy cleans and makes beautiful all beings in the universe, so long as man's dirty hand does not interfere. There is no true uncleanness or ugliness in anything.
And also when you said the balance in our body too, right? Everything got all the the cells, the transformation in our body. The balance is so sensitive. Like in the next paragraph, also it starts that it's so sensitive. We're not talking about even sometimes grams, right? It's milligrams, and it's when you when you lack that, then when you get like some serious sicknesses, it's not like headache or something. You get serious sicknesses, and even it might lead to death.
Even the starting of a cancer, it starts with couple cell, right? So then whole body get the balance of the body get lost, and then the people become cancer.
Also, other participants can, inshallah, we can get your comments in the chat, inshallah. And here, any comments, Colin Hocam, Muammer abi, this Ustad says aimless, purposeless chance, blind force, right? Unconscious nature. We cannot refer anything to them. Any more comments on this?
I think there are some comments in the chat, aren't there? I saw one comment.
By Brother Ali, in the universe, we see perfect balance and harmony. But how we rationalize the disabled born human or something like genetic defects from Al-Adl point of view?
Yeah, this is a criticism that is often brought up. How about, for example, if a child is born with 6 fingers, or sometimes you even see a child born with 2 heads? How does this fit in with?
You are muted.
Sorry, did I mute myself?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a criticism that's often brought up against the harmony and equilibrium in creation. These things which appear to be, which we call disability, are actually perfectly created also, and they're created in order for us to be able to understand what perfection is. There has to be apparent imperfection. So ability can only be understood against the backdrop of disability. So these things are also perfectly created. Death also, you could say, is a kind of disability. Death is the breakdown of the body. The body starts to break down. And so we have decay and destruction. But it's also done in a very perfect way. If death did not exist, it's the same as the termites. If human beings didn't die, didn't get sick and didn't die, then the earth would be overrun with humans. And, life here would be absolutely untenable. So these issues are easy to understand, really, easy to rationalize. God creates everything with a wise purpose, and that includes these apparent imperfections, such as disabilities.
So when we are talking about justice, we should have some right to criticize, right? So Allah created us from nothing. We don't have anything to claim, from Allah. Even some people who have disease, but at least they have, they Allah, gave them a life. They didn't, it's explained in the different part of the Risale-i Nur when Ustad says multiple levels of creation. For example, Allah didn't create us like a stone. He didn't create like a plant. He didn't create us like an animal. He didn't create, he created us as a human being. And on top of it, he gave us Islam, so which is the best, the best part of the creation. So sometimes if we lose some part of our members or some faculty, so this doesn't give us anything to claim from Allah, because everything is from Him. So He gives everything from His mercy. So whatever happened to us, we don't have any right to claim.
Yeah, we have no right to criticize really, because he's able, first of all, to do what he wants. But at the same time, he does put within us this understanding of justice, which is why we are able to make these kind of criticisms. It's out of our love for justice and our love for compassion and our love for mercy that we ask these questions. Because it doesn't seem fair that if I'm born with 5 fingers on each hand, why is the next person born with 6 fingers? It seems to be an example of injustice. But then we have to realize that everything is for a wise purpose. And who said that 5 fingers is the only way of creating a hand?
Or, yeah, and we don't know, let's say I have 5 fingers. Did I use it in a proper way? And I'm going to judge by, in the hereafter based on what Allah gave us. Everybody is going to judge by what Allah gave them, right? So
Precisely.
sometimes it seems that it's a favor, but it could be a disaster for us if we don't use it in a proper way.
Precisely. Some people, some unbelievers, the criticisms that they level against the notion of justice and the notion of perfection, a perfect creator, they say, well, look, there are lots of things that God creates which are imperfect, like the human body. The human body breaks down, the human body dies, and death is a kind of imperfection. It's a kind of expression of imperfection. Why can't the body exist forever? This shows that your creator is imperfect. But actually, the body has to be created with a built-in, I'm not going to say imperfection, but there has to be built into that body an ability to decay and to die, because death also is part of life. So in order for the body to die, these different systems within the body, these different systems, the different organs and the different members, it's as though that they have a time sensitive, some kind of time sensitive switch in them, that at some point they're supposed to switch off and then decay and destruct. So this also is in accordance with a plan. This is also measured out beforehand. So things don't just become disequilibrious. They become disequilibrious. There is a kind of equilibrium behind the disequilibrium. In other words, that disequilibrium is actually apparent only.
Yeah, so you cannot describe light without black, right? Darkness. So there has
Precisely.
to be darkness so that you can differentiate the level of light,
Things are known by their opposites, but you have to bear in mind that these opposites are only apparent opposites. It's not real imperfection when something dies, only apparently so.
I think if everybody was created perfectly, then there could be criticism why we are not flying, why we don't have wings to fly, you know. So, so I mean,
yeah, there will always be some kind of
if you
criticism.
want to criticize, you can find a way to criticize. But
Yeah.
our you know, what Allah created us to come this world and understand His name, His manifestation, so and to show His names, yeah, to be a perfect mirror to His names.
MashaAllah, Omar, there's also another great aspect, like when you said, if you know whatever Allah gave us, even if Allah, you know, put us in Jannah, some people will still complain. Yani, it's about the people, right? It's not about how, you know, how much Allah gives you. And also, you know, just like you know what you said, and also there are many comments in the chat. I will read them. You know, everything is with a wise purpose, in accordance with a plan. It's not like, for example, when we produce something, like in a machine, for example, you produce something like 1,000 products, and then one of them comes with a defect. But it's not like that in Allah's creation, right? Everything is with a plan. Everything, every human being, even every cell is with a plan. Like just like a painter, for example, he spends, let's say, 4 or 5 years on a painting carefully, right? He thinks about every part of that painting. Like for 5 years, he spends so much time on it. And let's say he paints a person with 2 hats, right? And he thinks about, he spends 4 or 5 years on it. And you cannot say that, you know, there's defect in his body, like, but he did it for a purpose. And Allah planned everything, every human body, even every cell in the bodies. So everything, even the people who, you know, we see them as, you know, with defect, they are, even in their body, we see a perfect creation, like, so to speak. Allah spent so much, you know, power, time on it. It's everything is, you know, with perfect. We should see the perfection in imperfection. And if we see something wrong, like, we should think about otherwise purposes, right? Because the one who made it, like, so to speak, he spent so much time and effort on it, and he did it for a purpose.
Yeah, I think that they're good points. Also, if you can do the same as last week, put all of the observations in chat onto the WhatsApp page afterwards, because there's some really insightful things going on in chat. We
Yes,
really have to thank those who are watching and commenting.
yes, inshallah. Now I will read the comments, inshallah, from Mehmet Swabi. He says, as it seems that we cannot control even our great system in our body, everything is created from nothing in reality by Allah. We only witness and do nothing. Witness, and just watching the creation of Allah and seeing the wisdom behind it and appreciating Allah's gifts. And Shahrani family says, some people have disability, disease, anything lacking, and they have golden hearts. Some people seem apparently beautiful and intelligent, but are heedless and blameworthy. And I guess Harun Hojam also says something like this. He says, disability is a relative concept to approach. Stephen Hawking, for example, is considered as disabled, but his intellectual capability were remarkable. The fact that we are all inherently of ontological poverty and inability makes all of us disabled relative to perceived perfectness. Also, Kornoja Mama, if there are any comments to the comments, to the chats, inshallah, we can get your comments too.
No, I was just going to say, but I muted myself, that this notion that we're all ontologically impoverished and impotent makes us all, as Harun says, we're all relative to perceived perfectness or, you know, perfection. We're all disabled. We all have nothing. We all start out with nothing, and whatever we have is given to us and is perfect. Even imperfection, apparent imperfection, is given in a perfect way. You know, imperfection is still maintained and is still nurtured and sustained. So this is why it can't be real imperfection. You know, there is perfection and imperfection exist side by side. Only one of them is real. The same as light and darkness, you know. Light and darkness exist side by side, but only one of them is real. The other one is simply the absence of the first. So darkness is just the absence of light. Darkness has no, you know, no external existence, no real existence. And the same goes for imperfection. Imperfection is just apparent. It's an appearance.
Ustad says, in another place, whatever Allah creates in the universe is good, either either by itself or by reason, reason, or I mean
Results.
Results. So yeah. So you think, I will give the same example. People go to the gym and they try hard. They run, they sweat. It seems meaningless, but actually, they are doing this to have a good health. To get their body shaped. I think it's all about perspective. If we have a clear perspective, if we see the reality of the things, then we will appreciate the creation. Otherwise, we will always find out something. People who wear eyeglasses can understand this better. Sometimes your eyeglasses get dusty and you see things blurry. No, but the things out there clear, but because of your vision, your lenses, you don't see clearly. So because of naturalist philosophy or the education that we went through, most of the time we don't see behind the veil. We only focus on the apparent things, apparent causes, and sometimes we get confused.
I will inshallah read one comment from the chat. And Mehmet Abi says, the disabled born human is a great creation of Allah to sort, rank, grade, full functional body. We understand from disabled born body that there is a range of creation going on. It is not against the name Al-Adl at all. We think we own our body, and we think disabled people, they own themselves too, and then we misunderstand the justice.
Yeah, when we are talking about, let's say, disabled people, let's say one guy doesn't have one eye. What is the worth of the other eyes? It worth the whole creation, right? What about the worth of his heart that is beating? Right? What is the worth of his leg, his arm? So it's worthless. It's priceless. It's priceless. So nobody can sell his eyes for the whole world. So let's say one guy doesn't have one, but he has the other one, which is worth of whole universe. Even if he doesn't have eyes, he has heart, which is beating, which worth whole universe.
Yeah, I think, people think that everything has to be perfect, and that if there is, even one slight example of imperfection, then this is some kind of indictment and proves that there can't be a creator. They say your creator can't be perfect if the things that he creates are imperfect. But imperfection, as we've said, is apparent. Perfection and imperfection exist side by side. We need imperfection in order to know what perfection is. But only one of them is primary, and it's perfection that's primary. So people have to bear that in mind, that without imperfection, perfection wouldn't be discernible, and that it's perfection which has the primary is the primary existent in this equation. And is it Zeba Rizvi? She says, I think it's she. We think this dunya, we need to have everything perfect, but this dunya is not meant to be perfect. The perfect place will be Jannah, which is absolutely right. This world is perfect in a relative sense. There are apparent imperfections. There are no absolute imperfections anywhere. But absolute perfection will be in Jannah only, in the next world. Here we see apparent imperfections, apparent injustices, apparent flaws, apparent deficits, and so on.
Ustad also gave example of a beautiful garden, right? Sometimes you can see there are some rocks in the garden. So rocks is kind of ugly, but when you put that rock there, it makes the garden beautiful. Why? Then you have something to compare the rest of the garden to a rock, So that rock also, make that picture beautiful.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Someone's talking about the cosmetic industry. Who is it? So I think Harun. This is the cosmetic industry stands on the perceived perfectness, for example. Yeah, people are obsessed with perfection. You see, this is actually quite interesting. It shows that human beings are in love with perfection and want things to be perfect. So again, we have this thirst or hunger for perfection. This need is hardwired in us, for beauty, for perfection, for all of the attributes in the most perfect states. The absolute perfections of the attributes, they're hardwired, desire for them is hardwired in us.
That tells us. Inshallah, I will read some more comments on the chat. As Zibar is this says, those who have one disability have other heightened abilities. That is also a gift. I had a neighbor whose child was blind, but he was so kind and so sensitive to others. MashaAllah. And that can make him to Jannah, right? MashaAllah. And also, I think Fatih also talked about that aspect. He says, if we are talking in the context of religion, we should also remember that this short life is not the focus of religion. Everything has a meaning as a mirror to Allah's names and attributes. And we have to remember about the afterlife also. Humans' missing abilities are relieved from the duties relating those, and they will be rewarded accordingly in the hereafter. MashaAllah. And Mehmet says, so creation of disabled examples is vital to be able to understand the importance of full functional examples. I think that's also important when you see a blind person, and everyone sees, like 1,000 people see one blind person, and they are like, whether they are believer or unbeliever, they feel a sense of appreciation for their eyes that they are able to see, and that is also that, like, that reward goes to that blind person, right? He makes other people appreciate that they are able to see. The creation of disabled examples is vital to be able to understand the importance of full functional examples. And Mehmet Ab also says, the point is to know Allah is not to judge without the wisdoms behind things. The point is to know Allah. And as Fatih also said in the previous chat, he said, we should also, everything has a meaning as a mirror to Allah's names. And we should try to know what Allah is teaching us, right? And try to know Allah's names and his attributes. And Colin Hocam, you read this. Zebar Rizvi says also, we think this dunya we need to have. Also, we think this dunya, in this dunya, we need to have everything perfect, but this dunya is not meant to be perfect. The perfect place will be Jannah. MashaAllah, so many comments. I'm continuing to read, inshallah. Mehmet Abi says, instead of fighting with Allah for things we don't have, we should be thankful and grateful for the things we have. We now have. And last two comments, inshallah, from Shehrani family. The problem is that we can talk about this in a way in which the rock disability, this disease, is still inferior. There needs to be a focus on how we are taking for granted our perceptions and judgments. And the last comment from Zabar Rizvi, every sickness and disability comes with a message, sometimes for ourselves and for others, key to know him. MashaAllah, everything has a message, right? We need to learn. I think Nebi Abi has comments.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum.
A few years ago, some of the blind brothers came to Adana for a reading camp, Risale reading camp. They were about more than 50. And some of the brothers wanted to take them to make city tour. And two buses were arranged. And with those two buses, they made a city tour. Once they stopped in front of a mosque during a prayer time. And all those blind brothers and the helpers, which are a resident of Adana, they went into the mosque and they prayed. But the drivers, two drivers, since two buses, were not driving and smoking at the side of the buses. One of our Adana resident brother wanted to warn the drivers and to give them some lesson about the importance of the body and the importance of the eye. And he wanted to call one of the blind brother, could you please come here? They were together with the drivers, and ask the blind brother, if you are told that you will be given two eyes again, but in response to this, you have to pray 5 times a day. You should refrain from the sins. Do you accept such a contract, such an agreement? But the blind brother said that, no, I am happy with this blindness. I do not give anything. If somebody told me that 2 eyes will be given to you, will you give something in response to this? He said that I did not give anything. I am happy with my condition. Then the brother who wanted to warn the drivers, he was surprised, astonished, but in that situation, the drivers got their lesson, and they also prayed in the mosque.
MashaAllah.
Thank you.
MashaAllah, we sometimes think that it would have been horrible, for example, like being blind, but Allah also gives some relief. Also, like especially if they're believers, like if they Risale-i Nur, if they have like strong belief, they are very happy with their condition, right? Allah gives also consolation. Sometimes Allah takes away something material, but He gives spiritual strength that no one could achieve, actually, right? Ustad also says, like with some sicknesses, Allah gives so much taqwa, so much ikhlas that healthy people cannot have. So, and in the chat messages we read that, sometimes Allah, takes some part of your body, some gives you sickness, but He provides spiritual strength. So it's almost the end of our session. Alhamdulillah, there's very good, mashallah, so many comments in the chat. So before we finish, inshallah, Muammar Hocam, Colin Hocam, any more comments on this?
I think, we are talking about the, Allah's name, justice. As a human being, we should, we supposed to be a perfect mirror of Allah's names. So it's good to know Allah's names, but the most important part is to reflect His names. So we should, after maybe, we should try to understand Allah's names. Also, we should try to apply those names. First of all, we have to be just for ourselves. Allah gives us body, spirit, so we need to act justly. And yeah, I mean, we should try to have our share from those meanings. It shouldn't be just acknowledged. May Allah help us to understand and live by it.
Amin, Ajman, inshallah. Inshallah, that was like dua, right? Muammar Abi? Our dua at the end. Inshallah, I pray that Allah that understands and see how He keeps the balance in the universe too, and may Allah allow us to feel that we are in His presence, seeing that He is always with us, with His knowledge, with His power, with His seeing, right, with His hearing. He is always with us, and He keeps everything in our body and everywhere. He keeps the balance with His name Adl, and may Allah allow us to feel His presence. Jazakumullah khairan, inshallah. Thank you for joining, inshallah. I will take, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.